Hello fellow bike people, part 4 of the tune-up on this Norco. Now we're getting into the nitty-gritty. We're getting to the bearings and the rims, so this is going to be fun. Now, unless you have a full suspension bike, and not counting the pedals, there's generally 4 sets of moving bearings on the bike. We're talking the front hub, the headset, the bottom bracket, and the rear hub. Now the headset is probably the simplest, and it's the one that's going to take the least effort to keep maintained. So on some older bikes, you'll see the twist down threaded section there. That's pretty outdated. With this type, this is called an A headset. Super easy to tighten up. I'm going to show you how to do that. So these 2 pinch bolts on the side, these are what actually physically clamps on the steerer tube inside. So this is what keeps your handlebar from spinning sideways. With them loosened, everything's free to move. So if you put your Allen key in that top one and tighten it up, that's going to remove any slack from inside your bearings here. And then with the wheel all lined up, just snug these back up and you're all good to go. Now these do have a torque rating on them, so if you have a torque wrench, I'd really recommend using that. If not, feeling it out's fine on most bikes. As long as it's not a super high-end performance bike, it's probably alright to just feel it out. So yeah, that's referred to as an A-head or a threadless headset. That's the modern way to do it. Basically all bikes these days are like that. If you have an older or a much more basic bike, now even some higher end bikes just in the comfort category will still have this. It's called a wedge system. So you know I mentioned there's some with the twisty bit there to tighten down the bearings? In that case, there's no top bolt in the same way as there is with this one. The twisty bit there with usually a 32mm wrench flat, that controls the tension on your bearings. The top bolt actually tightens the handlebars because it's a tube that comes down through here, and as you tighten that, this wedge will expand and go sideways, and it'll take up the space inside the fork, and that's how these stems mount in. I'll try and make another video about it later with like the exact kinds of all the headsets, but all you really need to know for now is that's the standard one. If it's a wedge type like this, your top bolt controls your handlebars side to side and up and down. So now moving on to the bottom bracket, so the bearings between the pedals. And this area of the bike takes a lot of force, because you're essentially, you're standing on the pedals. All of your body weight's going through here sometimes, but the manufacturers are more than aware of this, so they generally design bottom brackets to be tough. The standard design that the vast majority of bikes have, it's a square-shaped spindle where the arms press fit onto the outside and the bearing sets thread into the frame. That's exactly what this has. So if you notice any looseness in this, you're going to need bike-specific tools, so that's where you should probably take it to a bike shop or find a more specific video about it. There's also so many types of bottom brackets, it can be pretty hard to identify what you have. So this is your standard, is referred to as an English bottom bracket, but then there's the American bottom bracket, which is like kids bikes and older BMX bikes, where a cup presses in, the bearing sits in the cup, and then the threading's from the outside there along the spindle. There is the mid and the Spanish setup that modern BMX bikes use, where the bearings just press fit directly into the frame. There is the still English threaded bottom bracket shell, but the big external bearings like Shimano's Hollowtech 2. There's so many types, you gotta get specifics with that. The only thing I really need to point out is if you hear any noises or play in this area, take it to a bike shop or look up a specific video, because that's a bit more of an in-depth fix. And last of the major bearing sets is the hubs, the rear hub and the front hub. Now obviously, these are rolling any time the bike is rolling, so these take a lot of wear, especially the rear hub, because the vast majority of the rider's weight is on the back of the bike. So if any one of these bearing sets wears out first, most of the time I see it being the rear hub. So in terms of seeing if it needs any help or if you can just leave it for now, there's 2 things you can check. First, grab the frame, grab the wheel, shake side to side. Same thing, grab the fork here, grab the wheel, and shake side to side. You're trying to feel for any movement or play in there, any rattling feeling, because that means that the bearings are essentially knocking and they're causing premature wear and damage inside the hub. Like every time they knock against it, it's like wearing out the hub shell in there. Every little bump you hit, so you want to make sure there's no side to side play. The other thing is you want to just give the wheel a nice spin and hold next to the hub and see what you feel through your hand. if you feel any vibration in there, there's a good chance that either some of the bearings are damaged or the grease has dried out or been mixed with dirt or been blown out of there by water or something. So you gotta get some fresh grease in there, some fresh bearings, make it all run smooth again so you don't destroy the hub shell. Alright, so this is a generic bicycle hub. So you can see these turn along in there, and the bearings are sitting just inside there. So if this has play in it, the quick and easy way for you to fix this at home without needing bike-specific tools. Now, hear me out, this is not the proper way to do it. This is a way to get it fixed so that you can get it to the bike shop to get the proper tools or have it fixed precisely. But what you can do is take two 17mm wrenches, and if you see how there's the inner nut, the outer lock nut, and then the axle nut, you can ignore the axle nut altogether. Put two 17s on the lock nuts on either side and tighten them together. And that's going to effectively take away that slack from around the bearings. The only problem then is because it's not locked perfectly in place, it may come loose later, or you may apply too much pressure to the bearings. And that's why you need to take it to the shop and have it tuned up properly, but that will get you running without play in there for the time being. Okay, on to the rims. So, you do need bike-specific tools for this. These are called truing keys. Basically, these turn the spoke nipples and let you pull the wheel back to straight and keep all the spokes in tension so it lasts longer. There are three common sizes. Generally, it's going to be the black one for most modern bikes, the green one for kind of mid-range, and then the red one for lower end or extra heavy-duty bikes. But that's just generalizing. Each bike needs its own specific one. So, if I spin this wheel without letting the bike vibrate too much, you see how the wheel is sometimes getting close and hitting the truing key there, but not all the way around? Basically, we want to hold it here and find where the wheel hits the truing key. So once I know it's right here in this spot, I want to pull the rim that way, away from it. So I find a spoke that's on that side, so this one here, and I'm going to tighten it. Imagine it as though you're tightening from the outside, clockwise like a screwdriver. And then, that's going to pull that bit of the rim over, and when I spin this again, that area is not going to be quite as far warped. Same thing there, bit of a warp. We'll turn it back, and tighten the two from the opposite side that are closest to it. And that should pull that warp mostly out of the wheel. So using that home technique that I just showed you, that's going to be effective for getting you where you need to go, making sure your bike is safe to ride. But just like the trick with the hub, it's not technically the proper way to do it. So if you are able to bring it to a bike shop, they're going to be using one of these, a truing stand, to do the exact same job, but with a lot more precision and keeping the spokes in much more uniform tension so it lasts even longer. That said, the way I showed you is perfectly effective if you're comfortable doing it, and you can get a lot more life out of your wheels just by keeping your spokes all at an even tension and keeping the wheel straight. There is kind of a risk of over-tightening one of the spokes and damaging the rim, putting a kink in it, or worst case scenario, actually cracking the spoke nipple through the rim itself. That is extremely rare though, and you have to put a ton of force to make that happen. So, in my opinion, everybody who's comfortable working on their bike should at least try straightening out their own wheels. It's really rewarding and it does good things for your bike. So now we've done cleaning, inspection, brakes, gears, bearings, and we've done the rims. Really, all that's left for the next video is the last final touches and ergonomics.